right, it's a different scenario this morning, all the way from our studio at the Stock Exchange in Marina, Lagos. That's where Business Morning is reaching you from. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to 30 Minutes of Business. Before we head back to the Sunrise Daily Studio, I'm John Mekwa, and we're doing business starting as usual from the global space. We can tell you about oil prices this morning. That prices fell more than 1% today in one session after U.S. President Trump called on OPEC to reduce prices. We know he did that on Thursday, I believe, following the announcement of wide-ranging measures to boost U.S. oil and gas output in his first week in office. Brent, we see lost 87 cents. That's more than 1%, 1.11% to $77.63 a barrel after settling up 21 cents on Friday. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was at $73.77, and that's after it lost 89 cents. That's 1.19%. Trump has reiterated his call for the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries to cut oil prices to hurt oil-rich Russia's finances and help bring an end to the war in Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that he and Trump should meet to talk about the Ukraine war and energy prices. However, OPEC and its allies, which include Russia, is yet to react to Trump's call for that cut of price. Both benchmarks posted their first decline in 5 weeks. That happened last week as concerns eased about sanctions on Russia disrupting supply. Goldman Sachs say that they do not expect a big hit to Russian production as higher freight rates have intensified higher supply of non-sanctioned ships to move Russian oil, while the deepening in the discount on the affected Russian export grade attracts price-sensitive buyers to keep purchasing oil. Now we'll go to the Naira, see how that fared last week. The Nigerian FX market saw a strong influx of dollars, driving a notable appreciation in the CBN's closing rate. It closed by 17 Naira 50 kobo to settle at 1,531 Naira. That's for the CBN. While NAFEX firmed, there was also a gain there. Gained 5 Naira 78 kobo for the week to close at 1,549 Naira 22 kobo. And then looking ahead, well, it's expected that we'll maintain this range about under 1,600 at least in the official windows, while that cannot be said for the parallel market. We've seen it go beyond 1,600, but at least on the official windows, we do see that stability in the last weeks. Now, heads of state, including our President Bola Tinubu, as we speak, they're at Tanzania, and it's Mission 300 Africa. It's an energy summit, begins today at Dar es Salaam, and heads of state are there. They're expected to converse and commit to ambitious reforms and actions to expand access to reliable, affordable, and sustainable electricity. Talking about electricity to 300 million people in Africa by 2030. Mission 300 is an unprecedented collaboration between African Development Bank, the World Bank Group, and global partners to address Africa's electricity access gap using new technology and innovative financing. Nearly 600 million Africans lack electricity, which is crucial for development and job creation. So we'll follow. It starts today and ends tomorrow, 27, 28. That's when the summit is holding, and we'll see what comes out of that. Hopefully something tangible will come out of those conversations. Now, it's still a season of economic outlooks. Yesterday, Catholic Women Organization had theirs, and it was a meeting of not just women, but they invited economists, and also a little bit of spiritual touch was part of the conversation, and it's all to review and strategize for 2025. Knowledge of the economy and strategies to navigate in harsh times is everyone's concern. That's why the Catholic Women Organization is holding its maiden annual summit The women say it's a platform to connect faith to works and steps to build resilience. Individuals with relevant information are lined up for the meeting, beginning with economist and Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Rewani.
I pointed out to you that the level of disequilibrium has reduced. What it means in economics is that the next change is not going to be as violent as the previous change, because the gap between the true market and the market is very narrow.
Information received, however, faith and resilience is in the mix, but women are still challenged to take up steps.
Do you have what it takes to energize and ignite that grace to act for you? Grace is a quantum of power.
And even here, the topic of gender equality comes up.
We're all challenged. We all have collective responsibility to make sure that our women folk are empowered.
When I started, somebody saw something in me and said, no, this will not be a man's thing alone. Let us try a woman. If the woman did not develop herself to make herself what it is to be a leader, nobody will see you. You have to make yourself relevant.
The Catholic Women Organization believes that talks like this have become necessary to face Nigeria's economic realities.
Not just 2025, we're looking up to 2027, because even the government, the political clouds of the government is thinking of 2027. We too have to be thinking of 2025 to 2027 to be realistic. And even at the lowest level and at the high level, we all have to be agents of change.
The event is set to be held annually with themes that reflect current economic situations. So that's it. Catholic women also are concerned about the economy and how they would survive this year, 2025. We do know that there's been a lot of optimism in the air from a lot of people I have spoken with, at least. They do expect that the pains of the reforms that we saw in 2024 should birth some benefits this year. But I wonder what Mr. Georgia told me thinks about this. Mr. Tomi, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us here. Happy New Year. Yes, Happy New Year to you too. So I've spoken to a couple of people about the year 2025, and they're kind of excited and expectant. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, I'm not too surprised about that. It's almost like a car that's going downhill. You get to the bottom, there's no other thing to do but for you to start coming back up. So the mere sense that the worst of the reforms is behind us, we now begin to see how we can take the slow climb back to normalcy is enough boost, you might say. What people have done over 2023, 2024 was to adjust to the shock that came with this massive reforms. Ordinarily, they should have been prepared for it. They were not prepared for it. So it came as a shock. I think they've overcome that shock now and now beginning to adjust life to the realities of what they knew Nigerian economy would look like, and then you begin to then make this slow climb back up. So that's the reason for the optimism.
But I guess because you say back to normalcy, normalcy is going to look different.
Yeah, I mean back to normalcy. Yes, maybe I should qualify that. Not normalcy in the false life we're living with, heavily subsidized in almost all facets of our life, but normalcy the way you expect it in any climb where there are rules and markets determine your behavior, and so you expect that upon the happening of certain events you get some certain results. That's what I call normalcy, and I think we're beginning to all get to that point, because it took us time to win ourselves of this whole subsidy thing. Petroleum was heavily subsidized, we got used to it. Forex was heavily subsidized, we got used to it. Power was heavily subsidized, we got used to it.
Is power still being subsidized? Because I think there's another shocker that is coming. We're dealing with telecoms now. The battle is on.
Yes.
But I don't think we have dealt with electricity yet, or have we?
Well, no. The electricity subsidy has been drastically reduced. That's what that's what I would call it. And then the adjustments has been in this form of banding customers to, as you know, band A, B, C, where we're beginning to try and achieve some tariff complicity with regard to what you consume and how it relates to the cost of the electricity. I always say that discos themselves pay for electricity, and once they have to pay back to the market plus a fair margin, it will reflect on what consumers pay. So this is what you have. Now, could the banding have been done differently? Because what has happened is that you've segmented a group called Band A.
Yes. Sorry, Mr. Itami, please do hold your thoughts. We need to take a short break now. We'll certainly continue from that Band A. A lot of people will be interested in that. Let's take a break. We'll be back in just a moment. Stay with us. You're welcome back to Watching Business Morning on Sunrise Daily here at the NGX studio. That's where we're broadcasting from this morning. And Mr. Itami is here with us. We're talking about electricity subsidy and of course the Band A. A lot of people still complaining about it. I don't think we've gotten used to it yet.
No, again, you see, we can argue with the benefit of hindsight whether we should have segmented a tiny portion of consumers whom we assume can afford it, quadruple their electricity tariffs, and then leave the other band still, in the hope that you have what I call a cross subsidy from this Band A group on the other members of the group. But again, I think with the benefit of hindsight, we're beginning to see that it's creating undue hardship on these so-called Band A customers, and what perhaps should have been done should have been some streamlining and ensuring that these tariffs cut across. You may spare maybe Band E, that's the least of the list, and then but certainly from A to D, you should have done some sort of proportionate spread so that everybody contributes, as it were, towards ending the subsidy. Just having a few people carry that load could have a negative effect. Already you're seeing on tertiary institutions, they are complaining. They were suddenly put on Band A, and it just sort of took their budget totally off whack, where manufacturers are complaining. Even domestic consumers are complaining. And what we're beginning to see, which is not very good for the market, is a tendency for people to start moving away from grid electricity. And people are now going on solar. Yes, the investment is heavy in the beginning, but over a period of time, you not only recoup that investment, but you wean yourself from over-relying on the grid. That long-term may not be good for the grid, because then your most able, your most prosperous customers are beginning to do without you. And I can tell you, I have so many friends and I know so many people who rely less than 20% today on grid electricity, and that long term is not good for the market. So we must begin to look at ways of where we can ensure that we have a fair spread amongst all the consumer groups except perhaps Band E, who you can say, because band E requirements are not big. All they just want is their electricity point, television to watch their games, and fan and all that. But for all the others, once there's a measure of luxury to what you do, then you should be able to pay a fair price for it.
So do you think that this Electricity Act, where you now have states, they can generate, distribute, and all of that, do you see that filling this gap we talked about?
It's a game changer. It's going to be a game changer, but it's early days yet, because the devil is always in the details. But in principle, states are beginning to take control of their electricity market. It's a positive move towards over-reliance on the grid, because the problem, let me refresh your mind, is that there is generating capacity exists today. That number is put at anything around about 13,000 megawatts. But where the problem is the ability to wheel that power to the discos for ultimate distribution to consumers. The grid is constrained for so many reasons, including the fact that it's very old. And whenever you have that constraint, you are struggling with the ability of the discos to give that electricity. So the solution today, many people now find, is with mini grids. That is, states who are taking control, have energy sources, can begin to create their own mini grids. And what you mean by mini grid is you just have a conglomerate of consumers in a particular area, serve them, and ensure that electricity gets to them without the need to get to the super grid. And we will begin to see that with different forms of electricity sources, whether it's hydro, whether it's solar, especially in the rural areas, and especially for what I might call targeted customers, like manufacturers, like who are now beginning to go into the solar world. So the future of the super grid is endangered, let me just put it that way. But it's not anything bad. You still need the super grid, but the Electricity Act just enables states participate in all the value chain of the electricity industry. And what they will now do is that they will control their fortunes. Take Lagos State, for example. Lagos State is served by Eco Disco and Ikeja Disco. Ikeja Disco has Egbin. The same owners have Egbin, so they have a source of electricity. But right now they have to pass that electricity through the grid. But if you devise a means by which that electricity can be given directly to consumers in Lagos, bypassing the grid, it will go a long way to solving the electricity problem in Lagos. Same thing with Eco Disco. I'm sure you know recently that the original buyers are now, there's the first, what I might call, market-driven acquisition, which is a very good development. And the new owners are made up of Gencos. You have North-South Power, Hydro, you have Axela, Thermal, gas, and then you have Stanbic IBTC, that's the infrastructure funds. So you now have the deep pocket, you have the source of electricity. So all Lagos State needs to do is, through regulatory innovation, encourage that power to get directly to Eco Disco with minimal interference from the national grid. Once they do that, we'll get to the tariffs later, but let it be available.
Yeah,
so
just like petrol. But
yes,
some people have argued that this is going to bring a lot of inequality and imbalance, because we can talk about Lagos now. We can even talk about River State, and Federal Capital Territory. But can you mention some states that even if they were to generate this power, the disposable income to pay for it, so that there's no incentive for this investment, even if you wanted to attract the private sector to come and get interested in another. So won't this cause a major imbalance worse than the situation we have?
Look, no. First of all, just understand that we're not doing away with the grid. So the grid will still be there to serve those who need to get power from the grid. We're not doing away with the grid. But what we also do not want to do is to allow the current grid structure slow down states that want to move as rapidly as possible to industrialize. I heard you talk about African heads of state meeting in Tanzania. It's an embarrassment that we have over 600 million people that are not served by electricity. How do you then develop? So it is not a question of inequality. It's a question of allowing access to those who need the power so that they can rapidly industrialize. And if the creation of mini grids or any other sort of electricity arrangement that gets reasonably priced, because that's very important, electricity, of course aided by all the modern things you require, AI and all that, that's possible. So let them go, don't slow them down. Those who need the grid will still get power from the grid. I mean, life was never made for what you might call egalitarianism, which we always like to talk. It talks about equity. Once there is equity, people have access. Even the banding system, it tries to mimic what I'm talking about. Okay, big boys band, hey, you want power, take it, pay for it, and so forth, and all that. That could be discrimination if you want to look at it that way. But the overarching problem in Africa is that we're being slowed down by our inability to control our future. And the future today is those who can control their energy security own the future. It is not for nothing that the US is wanting to go to Greenland. It is not for nothing there is this big argument about drill. It's not for everybody knows the importance, and global energy needs, the appetite continues to grow. It continues to grow in spite of the varied sources of electricity. With all the noise about ending the reliance on fossil fuels, no way. Gas is still
coal is even still being used in some countries.
You can say that all and on. And if you go round Nigeria, every state has its unique selling points with regard to energy. It's just that been untapped because we pursued a national grid system over the years, just like with everything else that made us lazy. Right now, we are going to challenge the genius in us and begin to look inward to solve our problems. Look, if anybody was in doubt about President Trump, he said it. America, we're looking inward. So if we plan, yes, I mean, globalization is not going to go away in a hurry. But what that message is to every one of us, including Nigeria, is we must begin to look more inward towards resolving our problems, whether it's food security, whether it's energy security, whether it's even infrastructure. We just must do that, and we have the manpower. What has slowed us down over the years has been what I said, we've become all lazy from this feeding bottle for crude oil.
But finally, before we let you go, now the energy summits, the 300 million, we know that it's all started. I think it started, at least when I noticed it, was at IMF, World Bank proposed it, AFDB jumped on it, and then they now came together to say they want to empower or provide electricity to 300 million by 2030. Now we have African leaders meeting, but a lot of people just say, our president is just coming from one, he's going to another meeting. Do things really come out of this?
Look, your president is your super salesman. Let's not beat about the bush. Presidents all over, that's what they do. They're all traveling. Macron is all over the map.
Trump doesn't travel that much.
Trump, any days yet, but Trump is saying, even if I don't travel, I will do things that will ensure that you feel me. The important thing is that your president is your super salesman. So I'm not going to join the bandwagon to query the president for traveling. But let's get on the importance of energy for African development. Over the years, African natural resources have been fuel for the development of other economies. All economies but African economies. So take Nigeria for example. We have so much gas, and yet gas utilization within is minimal. And yet we have LNG and we're exporting. Yes, we're making dividends out of it. But how is that contributing to your energy security? And we saw that during the power privatization, with all the promises made about providing 5,000 megawatts upon the inception of privatization, we hardly met that target. And this is 12 years later. And why? The reason is that most of the gas fields, just like your crude oil, have been concessioned to the big boys. Secondly, you have not developed gas infrastructure for domestic use. For export, yes, not for domestic use. So Africa must begin to rejig its entire energy policy. And I think meeting at that sort of level to send a message down is the right way to go.
Isn't it strange that we have developed infrastructure to export our gas and yet we haven't developed it for domestic use? I mean, Africa is a wonderful place, but thank you so much.
And just before we go, again, just if it's anything to make all of us be confident and it will work, is that we were in the same situation with banking and telecoms. Don't forget. But the moment we took that strategic decision to take the banking sector into our hands, it was Nigerians who rose up to the challenge. We're seeing it with telecoms. We're seeing it in a little sense with aviation. So power should not be any different.
All right. We do hope this time next year, if we're going to be having this conversation, it will be a different scenario.
I hope so too.
Thank you so much, Georgia Tomi, Chairman, West Power and Gas. Thank you for your insight.
My pleasure. West Power and Gas, I'm no longer chairman, I'm a director.
All right, thank you so much for that. Thank you for your time. So that's it on this side of Sunrise Daily. 30 minutes of business, about 30 minutes of business, right? So let's head back to Sunrise Daily Studio. I'm Ini Januka. I'll see you later with the markets from here also. So join me at 1 p.m.